You order your coffee by name, a venti something, extra salt, oat milk, no foam. The barista writes it on the cup in marker, calls it out, hands it over. You don't think about the name on the storefront behind you at all. You assume it means something, some clever nod to coffee, to roasting, to the ritual of the drink itself. But the real answer is far stranger. The name on the cup comes from a 500-page novel about a man hunting a whale. A novel that, by most honest estimates, more people have bought than finished. In 1971, three friends in Seattle decided to open a small store at Pike Place Market. Their names were Gordon Boker, Jerry Baldwin, and Zev Seal. They had met at the University of San Francisco. Boker was a writer. Baldwin taught English. Seal taught history. None of them had a background in retail. What they had was a shared obsession with a good coffee at a time when most Americans were drinking whatever came pre-ground in a can. They wanted to sell whole bean coffee, roasted properly, the way a small California roaster named Alfred Peet was already doing in Berkeley. In fact, their first batch of beans came directly from Peet, and their first store was, by their own admission, modeled closely on his. That store didn't sell lattes. It didn't sell drinks at all. It sold bags of beans, brewing equipment, tea and spices to customers who wanted to make good coffee at home. Before any of that could open, they needed a name. They wanted something that started with the letters S and T. Someone had told them ST sounds carried weight, felt sturdy, sounded serious, so they started digging through old material looking for words that fit. One name that came up early was Pequod, the whaling ship from Herman Melville's novel Moby-Dick. It fit the sound. It fit the seafaring theme they wanted. Something that echoed the old maritime trade routes coffee had traveled for centuries. There was just one problem. Say it out loud. A cup of Pequod. Nobody wanted to order that. So they kept looking. Someone pulled out an old mining map of the Cascade Mountains near Mount Rainier. On it was a small, long-abandoned town called Starbuck. That word did something Boker's head. It rhymed in sound and spirit with a name he already knew from that same novel, Starbuck, the first mate on the Pequod. Calm, principled, the most level-headed man on a ship, captained by a man obsessed with revenge against a whale. They added an S to the end, Starbucks. It kept the nautical feeling they wanted. Sounded nothing like a whaling disaster, and as a bonus, nobody outside a literature classroom would ever question why a coffee company was named after a sailor. Here is the part that makes this stranger than it looks. Starbuck, the character, isn't associated with coffee in the novel, not even once. Melville never wrote him drinking a cup of anything. The founders weren't referencing a scene, a quote, or a moment. They were referencing a mood, a word that sounded like the sea, borrowed from a book most of their customers would recognize by name and remember avoiding in high school. That's not a knock on the founders, it's just the truth about Moby-Dick's place in American reading habits. It's one of the most famous opening lines in literature, "Call me Ismail," and one of the most commonly abandoned classics on people's shelves. Long digressions on whale anatomy will do that to a plot. So the most recognizable coffee brand on the planet is named after a character from a book that a huge share of the people ordering that coffee have never actually finished. The logo followed the same theme. An artist named Terry Heckler worked with the founders to design a twin-tailed sea siren based on old maritime woodcuts of mythical sirens luring sailors. Not connected to Starbuck, the character directly, connected to the same nautical seafaring feeling the name was chasing. For its first decade, this was a niche Seattle business. Beans, equipment, a small and devoted local following, no lattes, no drive-thrus, no green cups in every airport on earth. That changed because of one employee who almost didn't get hired. In 1982, a salesman named Howard Skulls joined the company to run retail operations and marketing. A year later, he traveled to Milan for a housewares trade show and wandered into an Italian espresso bar almost by accident. What he saw there had nothing to do with beans in a bag. It was theater. baristas building drinks by hand in front of customers, regulars greeted by name, a gathering place built around the ritual of a cup of coffee, not just the coffee itself. Skulls came back to Seattle convinced that Starbucks was sitting on something much bigger than a bean shop. He pitched the founders on turning the stores into Italian-style coffee houses, serving prepared drinks, espresso, lattes, cappuccinos. They said no, not out of stubbornness. Coffee beans were their business. Selling brewed drinks felt like a different business entirely, one they hadn't set out to build. Skulls eventually got a small taste store approved in 1984. It worked. Customers responded to the drinks the way he had hoped, but the founders still weren't ready to reshape the whole company around it. So Skulls left. In 1985, he started his own coffee house company called Two Giornal, built entirely around the model Starbucks had turned down. 2 years later, the original Starbucks founders decided to sell the company and refocus on the Peet's brand they had also acquired. Skulls, running his own small coffee house chain by then, bought Starbucks in 1987 for roughly $3.8 million. He merged it with Two Giornal and kept the name that had already built a following, Starbucks. Everything that followed, the green cups, the drive-thrus, the loyalty app, the tens of thousands of stores worldwide, was built on top of a name three friends picked because a whaling ship sounded worse. Which brings you back to your order. Venti extra short, oat milk, no foam. You are not paying homage to a philosophy of coffee roasting. You are not referencing a beloved literary passage. You are holding a cup named after a fictional first mate on a fictional ship, from a real novel that most people who have heard of it have never actually read past the first 100 pages. The name worked anyway, not because of what the book says, but because of how three words sound together when a barista calls them out across a crowded room. Venti, Starbucks. Somewhere in there, a whaling novel nobody finished quietly became one of the most recognized words on earth.